Picture a wedding where the bride has never spoken to the groom, not once. He's standing across the farmyard, this stranger, and in a few days, he's going to be her husband. Sounds grim, right? Like she's just cargo being handed off between two families. Now, hold that thought, because the real story is way stranger, and honestly, way better than that. We love to imagine Viking women as either helpless pawns traded like sheep, or as sword-swinging warrior queens who married whoever they pleased. And the truth? It's neither. It sits in this fascinating, messy middle that almost nobody talks about. So here's the question. How did Viking women actually choose their husbands? Let me be straight with you up front. The honest answer isn't a fairy tale, and it isn't a horror story. It's more interesting than both. Viking marriage was mostly a deal, a business arrangement between families. Land, cattle, alliances, status, that's what was really getting married. Love was a nice bonus if you got it. It was not the point. So no, most Viking women didn't get to run off with whoever made their heart flutter. But they weren't powerless either. Their power just looked different than we expect. Let me show you how it actually worked. First, throw out the modern idea of marriage. In Viking Age Scandinavia, you didn't marry a person. Your family married their family. A good marriage tied two households together. It meant more farmland, more workers, more warriors you could count on, more protection when a feud broke out. Love was a nice bonus if you got it. It was not the point. So the negotiation usually started between fathers, or between the groom and the woman's male guardian, her father or a brother or an uncle. They'd hammer out the terms. And yeah, that sounds cold. But here's what surprises people. This wasn't the man buying a wife. Money actually flowed both ways. Okay, stay with me, because this part is genuinely clever. There were basically three big payments in a Viking marriage, and they weren't there to buy the bride. They were there to protect her. First, the munder. That's the bride price, money or goods the groom's family paid. But here's the twist. It often became the woman's own property, her security, her safety net. Second, the dowry, the wealth she brought from her own family. That stayed connected to her too. And third, the mourning gift. This one's my favorite. The husband gave it to his wife the morning after the wedding night, and it was hers to keep. Land, jewelry, livestock, hers. Not his, not the family's, hers. Think about what that means. A married Viking woman could be sitting on real personal wealth that a husband couldn't just take. That's leverage. That's a woman with options. Now the big question. Did she get a say in who? And here's where we have to be careful, because it's easy to overstate this in either direction. The sagas, those are the Icelandic stories written down later, are full of women with strong opinions about marriage. Women who refused suitors, women who pushed their fathers hard, women who made their unhappiness very known. But, and this matters, the sagas are stories. They were written down centuries after the Viking Age, and they love a dramatic heroine. So we can't treat them like a documentary. What we can say is this. The law codes and the stories together paint a picture where a wise father consulted his daughter. Not always, not everywhere, but often enough that it clearly wasn't unusual. A forced marriage against a strong woman's will was seen as risky, even foolish, because an unhappy wife could make your life miserable, and her family would remember the insult. So could she flat out pick a husband like we do today? No. Could she veto, pressure, sabotage, and steer the outcome? Absolutely. Her no carried weight, and sometimes that no got loud. The sagas remember women who married men they'd rejected, and then made those marriages a battlefield. There are stories of wives goading their husbands into feuds, withholding affection, even engineering a man's downfall because they'd been pushed into something they didn't want. Now, again, these are dramatized. But dramatized versions of what? Of a culture that clearly understood a woman scorned was dangerous. You don't write that same character over and over unless the fear behind it is real. The lesson the men absorbed was simple. Bully a strong woman into marriage, and you might just be inviting a slow-motion disaster into your own house. Here's the thing that really separates Viking women from a lot of the ancient world. They could get divorced, and it wasn't some impossible, shameful ordeal. A woman could initiate a divorce if her husband was violent, if he couldn't provide, if he was gone too long, if he humiliated her. There were grounds. In some cases, she'd literally declare it in front of witnesses, and that was that. And divorce wasn't just an exit, it was leverage inside the marriage. A husband who knew his wife could leave and take her wealth and bring her family's anger down on him had a real reason to treat her well. That completely changes how we read the arranged part. Yes, family set it up, but she wasn't trapped. And a woman who can walk away is a woman who was never truly powerless in the first place. So if a Viking woman had influence over the choice, what was she even weighing? Not the stuff we'd list today. Forget butterflies and a cute smile. She'd be thinking about survival. Was he a good farmer? Did he have land? Was he respected? Would he be a fair provider? Or was he the type to drink through the winter and start feuds he couldn't finish? Reputation was huge. In a small, tight-knit society, everybody knew everybody. A man's character wasn't a mystery. It was practically public record. Was he generous? Was he reliable? Did he keep his word? Those weren't romantic questions. They were the difference between a comfortable life and a brutal one. And status. A marriage was a woman's whole social position. A good match lifted her family and secured her children's future. So when she leaned on her father to accept or reject a suitor, she was often making a sharp, practical calculation, not a swoon. Here's something that gets lost. Once she was married, a Viking woman ran a lot of the show. She held the keys. Literally, the keys to the household stores were a symbol of her authority, and you see them buried with women who mattered. When the husband was away raiding, trading, or fighting, which could be for months, she ran the farm. She managed the workers, the food, the money, the whole operation. So the marriage she was helping to choose wasn't just about who she'd share a bed with. It was about what kingdom she'd be running. She wasn't picking a master. In a very real sense, she was picking a partner in a business that could mean life or death every winter. That reframes the whole thing, doesn't it? Suddenly, her opinion on the match isn't sentimental, it's strategic. And smart families knew it. Now, if you want to find the Viking women with the most freedom to choose, look at the widows. A widow was a different creature entirely. She'd often inherited property. She had experience running a household. She had status. And crucially, she frequently got to make her own call on a second marriage, with far less of a guardian standing over her. A wealthy widow was one of the most independent people in the whole society. She could weigh suitors on her own terms, hold out for a good deal, or just not remarry at all and keep running her farm. So the closest thing to a Viking woman choosing her husband the way we'd imagine it wasn't the blushing young bride. It was the sharp, experienced widow who'd already buried one husband and knew exactly what she was worth. Let me clear up two fantasies, because both get sold to us constantly. Fantasy 1, the helpless Viking bride. Silent, sold off, no rights, no voice. That's wrong. She had property rights, divorce rights, real influence, and a family that would defend her honor. Fantasy 2, the totally free warrior woman marrying purely for love and adventure. That's also wrong, or at least wildly exaggerated. Most women operated inside a system of family duty and hard economics. The truth lives in between. And it's more impressive than either myth, because it shows something we don't give these people enough credit for. They built a system where a marriage could be arranged and the woman could still have real leverage, real property, and a real exit. That's not primitive. That's kind of sophisticated. So let's come all the way back around. How did Viking women choose their husbands? Mostly, they didn't choose alone. Families arranged it. Land and alliances drove it. A young woman rarely got the final word, but she was rarely voiceless. She could pressure, refuse, and steer. She often walked into marriage owning wealth that stayed hers. She could divorce a husband who failed her. She'd run the household while he was gone. And if she was a widow, she might choose entirely on her own. So that grim image from the start, the silent bride, cargo between two families, drop it. The reality was a woman making a hard, clever, high-stakes decision inside a world that gave her more power than we ever expected. She wasn't a prize being handed over. She was a player at the table. And honestly, a lot of them played that hand brilliantly.